The Wildcat Sports Club CNY Brewfest is coming up January 31st and February 1st at the New York State Fairgrounds. Taste your way through unlimited samples from more than 100 breweries. Now featuring hard ciders, seltzers, craft cocktails, and mocktails too. Grab your tickets now at cnybrewfest.com.
Yes, it is. Welcome in on the postgame show. Another tough one. The Orange falling on the road to a good Clemson team and not competitive. Really, from the midway point of the first half on, unfortunately, not too surprising either. It was a good Clemson team and a not good Syracuse team, and that's what we saw tonight. Final score of this one. The Orange did cover. They covered the 15.5, so the spread was a little too much in the end, but 86-72, the final score. Clemson over Syracuse. And I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts after this one. And if you do, and if you'd like to call in, we welcome your phone calls over the next hour or so on the Burdick Lexus, Burdick BMW postgame show. Also, get in the chat on QSportsTalk.com. Already seeing some of the chat's commenters rolling in right now after this tough one for Syracuse. I guess a little bit expected, but after the Notre Dame game, the second half specifically against Notre Dame, some optimism that maybe the team found something defensively. Maybe they'd have some momentum rolling in to this one. And they did get off to a better start, but it was kind of the reverse of the Notre Dame game. J.J. Starling did all he could. J.J. Starling is still really good at basketball. That's about it for Syracuse. You look at all the things stats-wise in this game, and we'll dive into it. Turnovers, a huge part of the story once again for the Orange. They had 14 turnovers. Clemson had just 7. And the points off turnovers, even more jarring. 19 points off the turnovers for Clemson. Syracuse just 4 points off of Clemson's turnovers. They, again, just don't generate steals, don't generate fast break opportunities. Fast break points, the Orange had a goose egg, none, and Clemson had 11. So despite Syracuse shooting 54% from the floor and J.J. Starling going off for 25 points, they were never in this ball game from basically the last 5 minutes of the first half onward here and fall 86-72, the final score. The phone number is 315-437-7644. If you'd like to chime in, that is 4ESPN44. Let's kick off your phone calls tonight by going to the phone lines with Pat in Syracuse.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if you get less calls on an expected loss and a loss that you didn't lose by 30, but it felt like 30. Or if you get them, what's your over-under on calls? Obviously, when Syracuse has an exciting win where they actually played the part for better part of the second half of the game against Notre Dame, it's just interesting to me, the pulse of different callers.
Yeah, I think this one's kind of expected in a way. I'm sort of curious too, Pat. I bet over under 3.5, I'd say. I think, because I'm sure people will be upset, but yeah, go ahead.
I haven't heard from Steve in North Syracuse. I haven't either. Steve brought up a good point a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to piggyback off of that. He said, every game it's a different problem. Like, we had 2 or 3 games where Lucas Taylor was arguably the best player on the floor. It was like he wasn't even in the game. And he's had several games where he's just complete. He's a complete shell of what we had seen at his best. And there's just so many examples of that. Now that Freeman's out, I think Jair and Childress brought this up on the telecast. Jair is not worried about coming out of the game, and he's kind of looking the part. But he had 5 games in a row where he just played atrocious. I mean, bad. I mean, just like not even Division I level, bad. I mean, just really lower tier Division I. Carlos, look, the score's 20-16. There's 10 minutes left, and Syracuse was kicking it on offense, and they weren't really turning the ball over yet. He takes Moore out for some stupid shots, and he got beat on a backdoor. He brings in Carlos.
Elijah also had 2 fouls, right, when he came out?
Yeah. And they were both where he just got beat.
Sure.
He got beat, and then they act like they're in legal guarding position, and he rides him for 20 feet, and the guy scores, and then they call a stupid foul. That was a foul that you don't need to call because the guy, it's marginal contact. Let it go. But at any rate, the point is, we all know what Carlos doesn't do, but what we would like him to do to at least be serviceable and justify Autry's stupidity for putting him in the game would be just play better defense, which he didn't do. Don't turn the ball over, which he didn't do. Make the pass that either leads to the bucket or make the hockey assist. He doesn't do any of that. Like, I'll give you 3 examples. He brings the ball up. He can't get by his guy with 30 feet away. He gives up his dribble, and he has to retreat and give it to Peter 35 feet from the basket. He did that twice. If that doesn't show you that he is not capable of playing on this level, I don't know what anybody is watching. Like, he should not be playing. He's that bad. And I want to go back to something on the Eric and Atan show. If they want to say that most teams don't run sets, go watch Clemson.
Yeah, they run good stuff. Yeah.
They run it almost every time. And Eric, I love the guy. He's a homer, okay? Most teams
I actually think Clemson is kind of an outlier, though, Pat. I mean, they run a lot of offensive.
They ran it the whole game.
Yeah, right.
But the point is, a lot of teams run it, like I said, at least for the better portion of the game. You're still going to try to get transition. You're going to try to ad-lib at times. We are an exception when we run a good offensive set and it works. We just run junk. I don't know why people can't admit it. Our offensive sets for years have been complete trash. Period.
Well, so we've never been a set-heavy team at Syracuse. I think part of the issue is they don't set good screens on the stuff that is actually running, so it doesn't really translate into guys getting open. I really wish Syracuse set tougher screens at times when I watch these plays develop. I do think Clemson runs a lot of stuff compared to Syracuse, for sure. I'm not going to argue with that. Clemson runs some of the better stuff in the conference, and they brought it up on the broadcast several times. They are committed to their stuff, and they stick to it, and they're patient on offense. So I hear you on that. I watched UNC Wake Forest last night, and UNC doesn't run much on offense. It's a lot of pick and roll stuff, and they're not. Maybe that's part of the issue for them because they're not having the season they want. Wake Forest runs a little bit of stuff, and I think it's maybe slightly more than Syracuse, but it's not drastic.
The issue is the big picture. If you don't run sets, you better recruit so you don't need them. When you're Colgate, Lemoyne, Siena, or even a mid-level team trying to compete in their conference, if you can't out-talent them, you have to out-scheme them. And we're doing neither. That's the point, Tim. You can sit there and chop up what I'm saying about who runs sets and who doesn't. You're missing the big point.
I hear you on that.
Point is we have no identity. We have zero identity. We don't have the talent, and we don't run the good schemes. We have no idea what our defense is. We have no idea what our offense is. We don't force turnovers. We don't run. We don't do anything. We don't block shots. We don't get steals. This is an embarrassment, and I guess the more fans that are numb to it, I don't know if that's better or worse, but you can tell me, Tim. Thanks.
So, yeah, I appreciate it, Pat. That is Pat in Syracuse. I'm not chopping up what he's saying or anything like that. I do think Syracuse, if anything, is on the underside of running sets, if you want to call it that. And I hear the case because a lot of the teams that we see that do run a ton of stuff on offense, like Pat's saying, are the teams that are at the mid-major level or lower conference level. And maybe Syracuse should be employing more sets given the context of this team. The thing is, Pat says this team doesn't have an identity, and it's kind of hard to argue with that when you watch the product they put out there tonight. They don't have an identity because they can't get to their identity. Coach Autry said in the preseason the team's identity was going to be they're going to get out and run in fast break, and they're going to try and space the floor and make threes. And this is a team that he wants to see them shoot a lot of threes and get out and run. Well, you could say, why don't they get out and run more? they don't get stops and they don't get steals. And when you don't get steals and you don't get stops, you really can't get out in transition. And we've learned that this is not a good three-point shooting team. And the scouting that they had, and you go back to the preseason, it's kind of laughable to think that they thought this was going to be a good three-point shooting team. So the unfortunate thing is the identity of the team going into the season we thought was going to be something, and it has been not capable to get to that identity. Now, maybe that is on coaching a little bit, but because then you got to try and adjust and find a different identity. And I think they've started to play a little bit more inside out, especially with Donnie out of the lineup here. It feels like Davis and Lampkin are initiating more of the offense from the inside. And this was a tough matchup tonight. Clemson has a lot of good bigs. Clemson also has some big guards that made it tough for Jaquan Carlos to stay with those guys on the perimeter. I see there's another phone call. We will get to you after this break here. 315-437-7644 is the phone number to call if you want to chime in, if you have thoughts after this one, and we'll get to your comments in the Cuse Sports Talk chat as well. This is the Burdick postgame show after Clemson takes down Syracuse 86-72. We're back after this on ESPN Radio and CuseSportsTalk.com.
Thursday, the Orange women.
What's up, chat? How we doing? I saw, Ryan, your comment made me laugh that my sweater is moving on you. Let me catch up here. Tim will be fired for saying bad coaching. I think we've gone over that. Yeah, Cuff didn't look great. I thought he didn't get a ton of run in the first half. After that missed dunk, I see some people are bringing up. Turn the lights out. Aren't they like pretty much out? They're not fully on. Oh, we got someone calling to piggyback off of Pat. I like it. I don't even know what was worse tonight, the defense or the offense. Hey, what we got? Sure. It's a popcorn mix. Ooh, Cornell mix. Where'd you get this?
The table. It said, take some, and then in parentheses, or
probably shouldn't
all.
chew right into the mic.
I opted for all.
Two callers I've never heard of.
Oh, great.
Exciting stuff.
See, in the ESPN Radio Syracuse tree, I was sure to include, let your thoughts be known by calling.
Well,
I got you. You dress to impress, I'll make sure to get you the callers.
I actually, what did I say the over-under? 3.5? We're definitely hitting that. Got 3 already.
I rigged it.
Winners get popcorn. Well. Oh. What was it? I'm good. Thank you. Very kind of you.
Steve texted me, I feel bad for Clemson minus 11.5 live line holders. I'm like, did that 3 count, dude? He's like, I thought so, but I guess not.
Oh, really?
Mark made it sound like the 3 counted on the broadcast, apparently. Apparently more drained that shot.
Oh, I didn't even see that. I didn't even see that. I think it was already checked out by that point. I'm pretty sure. What? It's like 75% right now? 25%, I'd say. Yeah, I believe in you. 25%. Oh, some commenter was like, Jordan, Paulie, and Tim could have been better out there. Jordan's direct quote was, I am bleeping nasty to that. Eddie driving back to Cuse in his Hellcat. It is a big offseason. I think we can all agree the roster identity that they're trying to get under red whiffed this year. Need more three-point shooting. Need it. JJ made some threes tonight. Team actually made some threes tonight. Maybe I think that was a season high, 11 threes. Let's see. Season high, 11 threes. Florida State, 10 for 25. Only other time they made 10 or more threes.
This is the Burdick Lexus and Burdick BMW postgame show.
Yes, it is. Welcome back in on the postgame show. Orange fall to Clemson on the road. Clemson, one of the best teams in the ACC, looks like it tonight. Syracuse in the middle of the pack of the ACC this year. They looked like it tonight. Not really competitive, kind of a disheartening type of loss here after the encouraging come-from-behind win against Notre Dame. That was a lot of fun back over the weekend on Saturday. The Dome got involved, then they go on the road, and yeah, that was not a whole lot of fun tonight for Syracuse. 14 points was the final in the end, and it honestly was worse than that. If anything, that's a little bit misleading after this one. So the phone lines are open and available, and of course, we've got a lot of people that have a lot of thoughts after another disappointing loss here in year two of the Coach Autry era. 315-437-7644 is the phone number to call. Again, that's 315-437-7644. Let's go to Jake, who is in Ithaca. Jake, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tim. Thanks for taking my call. First,
yeah, of course.
Let me just preface this by saying, with or without Donnie Freeman, I didn't think they were going to win this game. But I want to piggyback off what Pat was just saying. Pick and roll is not a play call. It's the default when your play breaks down.
Right.
It's so every time McLeod is out there, a 7'4" center, instead of running him on backdoor lobs like they did with us again, when he was at Florida State, how many dunks did he get on us in that game? Do you remember? 6 or 7?
Yeah, he had a good game. Although, I mean, we've seen McLeod this year. I don't know how usable he is. So
but
I hear what you're saying. Maybe run plays for different players.
I mean, Autry got him out there 20 feet away from the basket on pick and roll every time. Newsflash, Adrian, he's not Victor Wembanyama. Now, another question. When was the last time in a timeout you saw Adrian out there come out there with a clipboard and write down a play?
He has, I don't know about that. He has a play sheet on him at all times, and he's always got a clipboard, I think, for the most part, in a timeout.
Might want to rip it up because it's not working.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. Yeah. It's tough to watch this offense right now. I don't think they're running a ton of plays, but they are running offense, and I do agree more with Devo than...
I want to say one more thing before I go. Everybody out there, there's a lot of people out there that want Autry fired, and that's fine. But that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Syracuse University does not pay coaches. They got lucky with Fran Brown. They got lucky with Jim Boeheim, who wanted to be here for 48 years. They don't go out and pay coaches. So I don't know what the future holds. I feel sorry for the recruiting class coming in, and I think Sadiq White is going to be amazing. But they're just not going to get the coaching they need. Neither is Donnie Freeman. Thanks for taking my call.
All right, Jake. We appreciate it. That is Jake in Ithaca. On the last point, I don't know if Syracuse University is any different really than a school their size, private school, in terms of the salaries they're giving coaches. And unfortunately, we don't really know the exact details of contracts because they're a private school. But, I think the bigger issue right now and why Syracuse is in a tough position in terms of the salaries for coaches is they are still, we're guessing, and I think we know, paying off Dino Babers' contract at the moment, also paying Fran Brown. And, I mean, by all accounts, Fran Brown's getting paid pretty well. He was very happy with his salary, and then he also went out of his way to say how much they gave Elijah Robinson and how they had to give him a good chunk of, or a good healthy salary to get him as the defensive coordinator. The problem is not a lot of schools can afford to pay 4 coaches at once between football and basketball. And that's what you're talking about if you want Coach Autry fired. And when I say not a lot of schools, the list is very, very slim. And then you factor in that revenue sharing is coming next year. And whether we like it or not, that is a factor for all of these schools around the country right now. We're talking 50% of the revenue that these schools are making, up to 50%, right around that. All the details haven't been ironed out yet. But think if you're a restaurant and 50% of your revenue is gone starting next year, you're probably not going to pay 2 chefs at once when you're already in a position that is abnormal and you're having to deal with coming up with more money than you have been in the past. And NIL is a thing and all that, and you want to take advantage of donor money and use it towards NIL in this day and age. So that is my take on the situation. I don't think Syracuse University is unique in terms of what they're paying their coaches, or they're not paying them enough, and that's an issue. It's just you can't really pay 4 coaches at once, and I think a lot of schools will be in that conversation right now. Let's keep the phone calls coming. Let's check in with Grant, who is in Ohio. Grant in Ohio, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tim, thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, of course.
So I've been noticing, as a longtime Syracuse basketball fan, I think the biggest difference between the Jim Boeheim teams, even the Jim Boeheim teams in those last few years, and these Adrian Autry teams, is a lack of discipline. I'm convinced that we don't have the discipline to beat a top team like Clemson. What I mean by that is, even in the Jim Boeheim teams of the last few years, yeah, we weren't that good, but we would at least have a shot to be in the game with some of the top teams. We don't have a chance to be in the game with a team like Clemson, any of the upper top ACC teams. We're getting blown out by double digits on national TV. We're just getting embarrassed. And there's a couple plays that stick out to me from the game today. One of them, Kyle Cuff does a really good move, and I was impressed. Mm-hmm. But then he goes up and he cocks back,
misses the
for
dunk.
Like a 40-inch dunk, and it just misses it. We're not in a scenario where we can afford to have plays go away like that. We need those points.
Yeah,
so I'm convinced.
They didn't get any easy buckets in the entire first half, it felt like. I mean, they were working hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And when we do the work to get, I mean, Clemson's a great team, don't get me wrong. They play excellent defense. But when we get a chance to have open baskets like that, we have to capitalize. And I think some of that, we could run more pick and rolls. We could do this, we could do that. Some of that is just a lack of discipline. Take the layup. Do a pump fake. Play off 2 feet. Don't jump and pass.
Yeah. I mean, they do a lot of stuff, this team, that is shooting themselves in the foot, mental mistakes. Some of the turnovers, feels like every turnover they have is a live ball turnover that leads to easy points down the other end. So they're not doing the little things, which if you're going to be good, if your roster is lesser than what it has been in previous years for Syracuse, you have to be better at the little things. I hear you on that, and they have not been good at the little things for a good chunk of the season. And to your first point, it's true. Anytime they play a really solid team, like top 25 borderline team, we've kind of seen this type of result. I mean, they actually covered the Vegas spread tonight. 15.5-point spread. I get that Clemson's good. I get it's a tough place to play. But Syracuse should never be 15.5-point dogs in an ACC game, really.
No, and even Clemson, I looked across the stage and, they have talent, but I didn't think that they drastically out-talented us.
No.
And obviously they have better players, but, I mean, the Zachary guy,
they're experienced. They played together.
A few times.
Yeah. I don't think they're uber talented, though. I mean, even Shefflin is... No one at Clemson would have thought Shefflin would be this good of a player when he came there. They've developed him really well, and they run good stuff on offense, and they maximize the talent they have, for sure.
So I guess my question for you then is, what can Red do to instill a certain amount of discipline. I'm not expecting us to win out by any means, but if he can show tangible signs of like, I'm going to work with what I have, and we stop turning these live ball turnovers that turn into dunks on the other side, we stop missing these defensive assignments. I think some of the fire red train will kind of hold up a little bit. But like, what are things that we can teach the players so we can see it?
Yeah, I mean that's like the $1 million question right now, Grant. I feel like Elijah Moore is an example of someone that you would like to see him turn a corner here in the last half of this season. And I'm sure the coaching staff and Red are telling him play free, don't worry about making mistakes, things like that. And unfortunately, it just doesn't look like he's playing free. It doesn't look like a lot of the guys on the team, when they get in situations like tonight where they're down and they're playing against a good team, are playing with any sort of freedom. So it's walking that line of understanding that if you do make a mistake, you're going to pay for it. And we're trying to instill disciplinary habits into the team. So if you don't box out, you're coming out of the game. But also understanding that this is what you have, and we have to maximize the guys on the floor and make sure that they aren't looking over their shoulder and thinking about coming out of the game. So it's a tough line to walk right now. And that is, I'm with you. You would like to see this team just improve on the little things at the very least.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
Can I ask you one more question?
Yeah, of course. Go for it.
So I don't know much about how they travel, but do you know if like the cheerleaders or the band or anything, do they travel with the team to the away games? Not
typically, no.
Okay.
Yeah. This is going to be an interesting question. I'm curious where we're going now.
Do you think they get nervous because they don't have like that support there? Or?
I don't know. I don't think that really matters. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, I don't even know if that's pretty customary for every school, okay. No one's really bringing, I mean, in football, you see the cheerleaders travel, but there's not a spot for like an away band at basketball really, or anything like that. So
I was just wondering.
Yeah, no, I mean, they play better at home, but
okay.
Yeah.
I've seen them at home. I've seen them at the home games. I wasn't sure if they traveled there.
Yeah, if it's a ACC tournament, cheerleaders might be there or something. But yeah, I don't think that's the reason. I think if anything, that's just what happens for every team. So, all right, Grant, good stuff though. I appreciate you checking in. We do have to hit a timeout. I see there's a couple more callers that are waiting. We'll get to you as soon as we get back from this break. 315-437-7644 is the phone number to call. And we're back after this on ESPN Radio and CuseSportsTalk.com.
The Sports Show with Cody Mack.
That's going to be the Pauly talking point joke going forward, isn't it? We're not good because the cheerleaders and band don't go on the road. Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, Pat, that one threw me off there. It was too bad because I agreed with a lot of Grant's call there, and then he was like, can I ask one more question? And I let him, and yeah, that one didn't really need to be asked. Team didn't get any free throws tonight, guys. 5 for 6 at the line. Never. Yeah, Pat, you've never asked a question like that. I'll give it to you. Your questions have to do with the actual game for the most part. Yeah, we can't even get back on the bubble. Back brace, untucked jerseys, band and cheerleaders being at the games. Oh, no. But I lost the old computer. We're good. Yeah. Clipboard, that's another new one. Who is it that asked, does Red have a clipboard in the huddle? Yeah. I don't know if we're in Greg Robinson era territory yet, guys. Come on. I mean, I was on WAR, Pat. I remember you calling into that. You don't do all of them when you're there as part of student radio. It kind of rotates, but I'm sure we talked before we knew each other to this extent a little bit then. You still listen to them too, Pat? Yeah, Cal Gym looks a little empty. That's a tough thing. Could be looking at a 5-game losing streak. Pittsburgh at home. Pitt's real in need of a win. Cal, Stanford on the road. That's not easy. Duke at home. Tough stretch of games here. Oh, we got Steve on the line. Nice. I haven't listened to every show, but hopefully Steve's doing better. Haven't heard him in a little bit. Someone brought that up earlier, and I meant to say. That was Pat. You brought him up, right? Crowd was pretty good on Saturday, I will say. Fly guy. They weren't happy in the first half, though. Cheerleader gate. Steve from North Syracuse, Ryan. Who I believe was hasn't called in a little bit. I think someone said he was not feeling well, or so. Good to see he's back on the line post game.
Is the Burdick Lexus and Burdick BMW postgame show.
All right, back on the postgame show, and let's keep the phone calls coming here tonight. 315-437-7644. That is the phone number to call after the Orange fall to Clemson in a kind of snoozer of a second half. Syracuse never really belonged on the same floor as a very good Clemson team. Shouldn't say that, I guess. The first half, they were pretty competitive. Got off to a pretty good start, but it was a lot of just J.J. Starling shooting incredibly well. Not even really J.J. Starling making layups, just making a lot of tough shots. Starling finished with 25. He was 5 for 10 from 3. The Orange did hit 11 of 21 from 3. If I would have told you that at the start of the night, and the fact that they shot at 54% from the floor, don't think we would have guessed this would have been an uncompetitive loss, but the turnover's a big part of it. Not getting any steals, 0 fast break points, and in summary, another frustrating loss here for Syracuse. Final score 86-72. Phone lines are jammed right now. Let's go to our next caller, which is our guy Steve in North Syracuse. Hey, Steve, how's it going?
Yeah, I was listening this afternoon when Alan Griffin, who was still in Syracuse because his wife's having a baby, was on the Brian Higgins show. And Brian, at the end of that interview, which is, by the way, on your Syracuse Sports Talk website,
yep,
was asked what he thought was most looking for in this game, and his response was, I wrote this down, it's a war inside. I just think whoever wins the inside battle wins the game, and that's from rebounding to scoring in the paint. When we establish our inside presence, we're a different team. I don't think we won that battle. I think that Clemson's guys, Locken and Schifflin, outplayed our guys. Eddie Lampkin wound up with pretty good numbers, as he often does with the burst at the end of the game.
Yeah.
But Schifflin basically swallowed Jair Davis whole. So I don't think Alan, I'm sure, is very pleased to be a father, but I don't think he's very pleased looking at these tapes. A couple other quick comments. One, you had a caller complain about how they used Naheem McLeod. He doesn't appear in the box score tonight. They didn't use him at all.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I thought that was a little odd that he was going to McLeod of all players, because he's not a factor. No, you're fine.
And then there was the attempted dunk by Kyle Cuff. If you look at Kyle Cuff's high school film, he's like a high school version of Michael Jordan, just flying through the air, making all kinds of dunks. But then he hurt himself at Kansas, and he's not been the same player since, but he doesn't seem to realize it. If you're no longer able to dunk, and really we don't have any dunkers in this team, you've got to go in thinking layup, and I think that's one part of Cuff's game that could use some improvement.
Yeah, I agree with you, Steve. We appreciate you checking in, as always. To Steve's first point and Coach Griffin's point of the battle on the inside will determine this game, the war on the inside. Points in the paint, 40 for Clemson, 20 for Syracuse, and it was even more lopsided at halftime. So plus 20 points in the paint for Clemson. Rebounds, 28 to 24. That's probably a season low in rebounds for, honestly, maybe both teams. Syracuse, I would say for sure. 24 rebounds is not a lot in a basketball game. There just weren't a lot of missed shots in this game. And it did feel like Clemson got a bulk of the key rebounds. They had 8 offensive rebounds. The Orange had 5. They have struggled to rebound without Donnie Freeman. If you want to talk about what are the differences in the team, I think Freeman's missed 5 games now, I want to say, and they really have not rebounded well in any of those games. Georgia Tech, I think, was the only game, the first game that he missed, that they rebounded pretty well. But they were a good rebounding team with Donnie. They have not really been a good rebounding team without him. So that was definitely a factor in the loss here tonight. Let's get another phone call. Let's check in with Ryan, who is in Boston. What's up, Ryan?
Hey, Sam. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to call in, and I'm not really concerned about breaking down the micro of, tonight or even other games. I don't think it's really worth our time to be saying, what should Carlos be doing defensively, or, what type of defense is Lucas Taylor having? Probably good, but it's not really worth it to break that down. And this is kind of going to my greater point of the macro of, these are all guys that are going to be here for 1 year. What should we be expecting Red to do for the rest of the season? In my opinion, call me whatever you want to do, but as the season's kind of over as it is, we don't really have any postseason hopes, I think, at this point in time. What do we want Coach Red to do? And I'm looking at Chapa. Why aren't we playing Chapa? I'm looking at, too, Donnie. I think I agree with Brian Higgins' point of I don't think we're going to see him playing in a Syracuse orange uniform again. So I know that's a lot, but I'm just kind of getting at, what do we expect in Red to do for the rest of the season and going forward?
Yeah, I would say on the note of Chapa, I mean, they're still starting him. He's just not giving you a ton. Like, it's kind of hard to say they should be playing him more. I don't think the season's over, but I think your point holds, Ryan, that we should start thinking about, okay, who's coming back? What do they need on the roster next year? Because obviously the biggest thing here is correcting the transfer portal mishaps they had this year and trying to figure out what pieces they lack. And I think we had this conversation on Orange Nation a little bit, maybe yesterday. To me, the biggest thing is the center position is a glaring need in the transfer portal because Eddie obviously is gone. And who knows about Donnie? Who knows if he goes to an SEC school for way more money? Who knows if he goes to the NBA draft? Because I think that still is somewhat of a possibility, even if he doesn't play again this year. They draft based on potential, and he was a lottery pick projected before the season. So he would get a look, and he would at least get some consideration. So, if you lose Donnie on top of Eddie, you really need some post-production to come in. We know Jair Davis isn't coming back. So, yeah, I mean, I think the center is the biggest thing. I think Red has been asked what is like the biggest thing on the transfer portal wish list, and he has said center. And, you know, it's tough to say exactly what else they need. But, yeah, I would like to see Elijah Moore turn a corner and you feel better about him being like a core guy next year on the roster.
Yeah, and, you know, don't take up too much time, but, you know, going back to that, I mean, you have, I guess, if you have Chopper coming back, you know, best case you have JJ, we're kind of coming in loaded, you know, in the 1, 2, maybe 3 spot. Like, you know, who do we have coming back down the team? But, you know, my bigger worry, I guess, too, and something I'll leave you with is, you know, how are we going to navigate the transfer portal? I mean, you know, we lose out on guys like Dakota Few and, you know, other people where, you know, we're expecting to at least get some starter talent. And that's how ultimately, I don't think they wanted Carlos. You know, I don't think they wanted.
I mean, he was the third choice. I think we know that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, you know, it's great and all for Autry to say, hey, let's go and get someone for the 4 or 5 spot. But, you know, in what confidence? We don't, obviously, you know, we don't have any confidence to develop current players to be a 4 or 5 spot. And how do we know we can go out and be competitive in the transfer portal to go and, you know, fill those spots? So,
you need money, unfortunately. And I think they're behind in that regard and doing all they can to improve it. But, it's becoming more and more about how much money do you have. And, you know, that's where getting the NIL budget up is very important. And then utilizing that NIL budget to a point where you don't bring in someone that doesn't work out and you give them a lot of money. Syracuse is not a school right now that can afford that. Other schools maybe, but they're not in that position, unfortunately. They almost have to hit on everything in the transfer portal because, frankly, they have a lot of holes on the roster, and they're going to have a lot of pieces to fill, and they only have so much money, and it requires a lot of money to get starters, like you're saying.
They got to play some money ball. Well, anyways, thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. Just want to, you know, keep eyes forward here and see what we can do going forward. So appreciate it.
No, I think it's at that point of the season in a way to really start ironing out. I mean, I thought today watching Chris Bell, where is he going to play basketball next year? Is he going to come back to Syracuse? Obviously, there's still some games left to decide how he's feeling and his mindset going into the offseason. And, you know, at times I think we've had the same conversation with Chris, and then he has come back, and he's been the only guy from that freshman class a couple years ago, or that last recruiting class for Boeheim, that has stuck it out and stayed here at Syracuse. And I don't really know how much, you know, transfer portal attention someone like Chris Bell would get. I think going into this year, he probably would have gotten a fair amount just because of his numbers, and it did seem like there was some upside and still some room for growth. But after 3 years, we kind of know that he's a guy that is in the corner a lot and shooting a lot of threes from there and not doing a whole lot else. And, you know, some teams can use that and probably would utilize him a little bit more or get maybe a little bit more out of him. But as it stands right now, Syracuse, there's not a ton of other shooters on the roster, so he's pretty easy to scout against, and it's pretty easy to just take him out of the game sometimes, given that Syracuse doesn't have a lot of other shooters around him. So it's going to be fascinating, the transfer portal this go around. I don't know who's coming back, and I don't know if, you know, what you do in terms of what is the biggest wish list item right now, but I do think you definitely need a center. And I go back to the conversation that we had kind of in the end of the first season under Coach Autry. They didn't have anyone at that 5 position because of injuries, and then Malik Brown was playing out of position. And a lot of us were saying going into this year, you need a true point guard and you need a center. And they did kind of get that. I just don't think they hit enough. I think Eddie, in theory, puts up good numbers. He almost got to another double-double here tonight, 14 points, 9 rebounds. But, you know, the point guard question mark is still the bigger talking point coming out of it. They did not hit on the point guard position. I think they would like to have a taller, more versatile point guard next year if they could, for sure. And like we were just talking about with the last caller, it wasn't like Jaquan Carlos was the first pick in the transfer portal. All right, we can hit our final break here. Then we'll keep the phone calls coming. Chris, I know you've been waiting patiently. We'll get to you out of this timeout. If you have a thought after this one, you can call in as well, 315-437-7644. We're back after this on ESPN Radio, QSportsTalk.com.
You can't miss a moment.
Yeah, Pat, I would I think I've maintained that they didn't hit in the transfer portal. It's also they don't have the money that a lot of these teams that are hitting in the transfer portal do. Tell us a joke. The biggest joke I've heard tonight is that you should send cheerleaders in the band to the away games and you start winning. Yeah, sorry, Pat. I probably shouldn't have been as argumentative. I understood what you meant. Jordan is relaying a joke to me that I will relay to you and wait for the punchline to be typed to me. His joke is, why was the lizard unable to satisfy his girlfriend? Here comes the punchline. Do I know who's doing the game for ACC Network tomorrow? Actually, don't, Ryan. I should probably look that up. He suffered from erectile dysfunction. Well done, Jordan. Because his name was Paulie. What does the fish say when it hits the wall? Damn. That's my joke for the night. Oh, man. I think we hit the over on the callers, though, right? Hard to keep up with the chat. I try scrolling up, and then there's more chat that I get brought down to the bottom again.
That's quality.
What, your joke?
Yeah, that's quality. That's quality humor right there. It blurs the line. It's like, you can say this and feel good about it, but it's a little risque,
Ryan says, what is the difference between a garbanzo bean and a chickpea? I have no idea.
Oh,
Ryan.
I've heard this one, but I forgot the punchline.
I never had a garbanzo bean on my face before.
Nice.
This is what we should be doing tomorrow during Orange Nation, just telling jokes the entire time.
We should do that when Paulie's on there. I've got a lot to say tomorrow.
That's true.
I don't really. I mean, I'll have some things to say.
You're a man of many things to say.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have things to say. Shoot, who's the artist of the day? I forgot. Boy George. Just listening to Boy George. Artist of the day is Boy George. Man, does Syracuse suck.
Anything I miss in the chat? I'm trying to scroll up, but there's not much.
I love watching your face and reaction to callers.
Yeah, well, I mean, am I crazy or was that band cheerleader comment?
No, but
just
like
ridiculous?
when Jake said the thing about the clipboard, you're just like, look, I feel ya. Like
the clipboard. Did I agree with him on that?
No, well, he was like, well, he better cut it out because the plays aren't working. You're like, look, I hear you, man. Like, the offense is tough to watch. But it was just funny because he thought he had this crazy zinger and you were going to get mad. And you're like, look, dude, no. Like, I know. What's the deal with Red Autry's offense?
Full court was a good idea to start a game every time.
Oh, dude, we got more jokes. Let's go.
What did the Pink Panther say when he stepped on an ant?
Grape life showed. I don't know what that means, unfortunately. Tea takes. That's very kind. With a dead ant, dead ant. Dead
Rest your
dead
voice,
ant,
Jordan.
Dead ant, dead ant, dead ant, dead ant.
Yeah, last Sunday wasn't great, Zach.
That's a crazy comment.
What?
Just out of nowhere.
The women's basketball team's defense.
Yeah,
it wasn't
in the
good.
Clouds. Oh, you're right, Florida guy. Let me try to find some sound. We've been getting too many calls.
Yeah, we can sneak that in last segment, whatever sound we got. Just
maybe we'll have video.
Okay, just let me know.
Is the Burdick Lexus and Burdick BMW postgame show.
Final segment on the postgame show after a tough one for the Orange. We've said that a lot this year, unfortunately. And this one, you can chalk up to Syracuse going against a good team and not staying on the floor against a good team again. Very good Clemson team, especially when they're at home. The Orange are going to be going up against a lot of good teams over the next 4 games. And playing two of those games on the road in California. They have the Stanford-Cal Conference California Swing coming up before that Saturday at home against a Pittsburgh team that is good, that I think is an NCAA tournament team. And they've also lost 4 games in a row, including a loss to Clemson in overtime last time out. So Pitt really needs a win, and they're going to be coming to the Dome as favorites. Syracuse will be dogs, we can confidently say, in the next 4 games after being 15.5-point dogs tonight and losing by 14. Let's get back to the phone lines, and let's go to our guy Chris in Poughkeepsie, who has been waiting very patiently. Chris, sorry it took a little bit, but I appreciate you waiting. And what's on your mind after this one?
Horrible loss tonight. Well, It is what it is. I feel as though right now that we're really missing G-Mac and his coaching, and especially with the guards. You look at what has transpired this year. We had JJ down. Now we got Freeman down, and we got Juan Carlos running the point, and it's hard to watch, man. It's hard to watch. The turnovers, the lackadaisical defense, he's not out there. I mean, he had, 2 3-pointers tonight, I think. That's probably the best that we got from him tonight.
He was 1 for 1 from 3, 3 for 5 from the floor, 7 points in 20 minutes.
I mean, okay. It's still like, okay, where are we going with this guy? He's not giving us what we need. And, a lot of people talk about Red, it's Red's problem. Yeah, I agree. Red's got something going on right now within the team. We are really playing a lot of transfers. I mean, Jair Davis, Juan Carlos. It's tough to really expect for us to get a competitive team, in the tournament, first of all, with those guys. We haven't gelled enough to be able to have a legitimate team to get into the tournament. And, I think we need to really stay positive at the same time, because Red is working the recruiting stage. What's he got coming in next year? We have Fresnell, Womack, Sadiq, Keon Anthony. Yeah. We're looking at the center. What's his name for the 26 class too? I think his name is Darius Ratcliffe for the center position.
That I don't know. I'm not up on 26, but I'm sure you're right.
No, it was just something I looked at. But my point being is that when you look at these kids coming in next year, and with who's staying from this possible team this year, we could have something special. You got to give Coach Autry some time to work his magic. He's been in the seat for 2 years. It's hard to watch this year. I get it. You got to give him time. A lot does come down to the fact that, think about how special G-Mac was to that team, just as a player. Now, when we lost him as a coach, God bless him to Siena, it took a huge part of our coaching out. And that was like Syracuse heart and soul. So, trying to fill voids from what we've lost in the past and rebuild at the same time is going to be difficult. You got to stay positive. Everybody's working the nil and the money.
NIL,
the NIL has changed everything. We get it, but the thing is that it's still basketball, and we need to keep the fundamentals in place. Everything's going to change. There's going to be things that change in the game. We got to adapt to them. The one thing we got to stay focused on is just building this team around our coach. Our coach has to be comfortable with the players he's coaching. So I like what's going on with Peter Mastrovic. I like him. I like his defense. He gets called for a lot of stupid fouls, but I think it's because it's a different style of play than what he's accustomed to. He's coming across from Europe. It's a different style.
Even at an offensive interference tonight, and you can get away with that in Europe, not over here. So he's learning the game a little bit. Yeah, I thought he was a little off tonight, but Majstorovic hasn't been a problem. He's a role player, and at times he's filled his role pretty nicely.
Absolutely. And when we get down to it, when we remove the transfers this year, not remove them, but when they move on and those spots open up, you really look at the incoming class that's coming in this year, and then whatever we get from the transfer portal should be really focused on the center and strong forward position. You know, these guys that are coming in with what we have on our team now coming in next year, we do have a solid team structured for the next year. We just got to really get what we can out of this year and learn from what we're doing right now. You know, it's going to be tough, man. We got Power 5 teams coming in. We got to play Duke. We got to play UNC still. Like,
it's a tough schedule
right
here.
Now.
Yeah,
we're losing the subpar teams to begin with. Now, what's going to happen when we're playing at Duke? You know, like, what can we expect?
Duke's coming here. Yeah. The next 4 games they're not going to be favored in. We're hitting the toughest stretch of a weaker ACC right now, for sure. Chris, I appreciate the time, and thanks for waiting patiently. That is Chris in Poughkeepsie. I do think the biggest concern or the biggest thing that Red has struggled with is what Chris was talking about. The team had very little continuity on the roster going into this season from last year. Now, Chris is making the point, which I agree with overall, that we need to be patient here. We need to wait, see what the recruiting class brings next year, especially the way that the recruiting class is set up. You feel a little bit better about the type of talent that is coming into the program next year. But I will say, continuity is still going to be a problem next year. Like Syracuse, why were they pretty effective last year and got to 20 wins? That roster, even though there was a coaching change, that roster was pretty familiar with playing with one another. And a lot of those guys that were a part of the freshman class that became sophomores, and then, 5 of them ended up transferring out, whether it's Kadir Copeland, Justin Taylor, Malik Brown. It became a roster this year that lacked continuity. And next year's roster, we don't exactly know what it's going to be, but it's probably going to be a couple new freshmen playing some big roles, maybe even starter-like minutes, and Sadiq White and Kyan Anthony. Hopefully, J.J. Starling is back because, man, was he good tonight, and, man, has he really taken a leap this year. So Starling will be in his 3rd year in the system, hopefully. But outside of that, I mean, we don't really know who's coming back, and we don't know how good you feel about the situation going into next year from a continuity perspective. Before we wrap things up here tonight on the Burdick Postgame Show, let's hear a little bit from Coach Autry from the Syracuse Sports Network broadcast over on TK99 from Learfield. And let's hear what Coach Autry had to say to our guy, Paulie, as he was leaving the floor.
I thought the second half, at the end, we played a little bit more energy, a little bit more fight. We kept fighting. The big guy stepped out and made some threes. Got to do a better job with that. But I just thought, a lot of this stuff, we were self-inflicted. Careless turnovers leading to live ball turnovers. Not playing. We talk about playing with space and flashing and playing with some pace. I thought they pushed us out, so they made it difficult for us. But that was a lot of that was our fault. We just got to do a better job of that. And again, we just got to keep fighting, keep moving, and get ready for the next game.
All right, so that was Coach Autry after the game, always brought to you by RomanoCars.com. That was him on the Syracuse Sports Network broadcast from Learfield. So I'm sure we'll get you more of Coach Autry's sound tomorrow. His postgame press conference not up yet, but it will be up at some point. And we will be giving you the key bites from that tomorrow on our show, Orange Nation, which begins at noon, 12 to 2. Jordan will be sitting in for Paulie, so you'll have to wait to be yelling at Paulie until the day after that, I guess, because he's got to make his way back from Clemson. Paulie was down there at the game, as always. So you have Orange Nation to look forward to tomorrow with Jordan and Steve. Cody Mack, the sports show from 3 to 4, Newhouse afternoon. Before that, from 2 to 3. And then Brian Higgins in the 315 from 4 to 6 tomorrow. Normal slate of shows. You can always watch these shows back on QSportsTalk.com and on our Q Sports Talk YouTube page as well. Shout out to Steve in North Syracuse. He gave us a plug earlier on for that Alan Griffin interview. Griff was not at the game tonight because his girlfriend is expecting a baby. So shout out to Griff. He's going to be a father here soon. Very important. He could not travel with the team. Sounds like he will not be traveling with the team to the California swing as well because of the timeline of when the baby is coming. But that is all very exciting news for Griff, and you can listen back to that interview Griff had today live in studio with Brian, and all of our other interviews can be found on the podcast feeds and Cuse Sports Talk on YouTube and CuseSportsTalk.com. Thanks so much to everyone in the chat. As always, here staying with us late night on CuseSportsTalk.com. Thanks to everyone out there who is listening on the radio airwaves as well. Stay warm, and we will talk to all of you tomorrow as we wrap things up on the Burdick Postgame Show. Once again, the final 86-72, Clemson over Syracuse. And the Orange will turn their attention to Pittsburgh, a home game on Saturday. We'll talk to you next time on CuseSportsTalk.com and ESPN Radio.
The 3-1-5.